I'm joined by James Cosmo, actor and whisky enthusiast, and we are here to chat about James's whisky, which he's created in association with Annandale Distillery. So, James, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's lovely to see you. So you've been the face of Storyman whisky for the last couple of years since it launched, but you've been very involved since the start, which goes back much longer. So can you just tell us, for anyone that doesn't know, just about that journey to how you got to where you are with this whisky?
Yeah, I was. I knew the folks at Annandale from before. I'd visited them when I did a movie called The Outlaw King, and they were down at the distillery, and they asked me to come along I don't know what they were doing, some publicity thing. And I went down and I met David Thompson, the owner of Annandale, and his team. So I knew them already. But the genesis of it really was, when you do films or a TV series or something, at the end of it, you always have to go and spend ages buying people presents, and you just end up in Waterson's buying them books that they're not going to read, but you just do it, And I thought, it'd be so much nicer if you had something personal that you could say to somebody, here, this is from me to you, it's special. And so I spoke to my business partner, Andy Pancioli, and he said, well, let me think about that. And I said, well, why don't you contact Annandale, who I know, and mention my name and see if they could, maybe bottle me some nice whiskey or something. So Andy did, with subsequent meetings after that. And we decided that maybe there was more to it than just doing a very small run of 100 bottles or 200 bottles or whatever. And David Thompson said, why don't we, create a really, really special whiskey, a really good, because I like blended whiskey mainly, and create our own, a sort of partnership between myself and Annandale. And that's what we did. We, a chap called Keith Law, who's a master blender, joined us. And golly, it took quite a while, the sourcing of the different spirits for the blend. But Keith, I'd travel up to Annandale, and we'd have a tasting, and it was just a matter of tasting, and then we'd go in that direction and refine it. So we'd several tastings and talked about it. And Keith is one of these people who's got just such a knowledge of whiskey. It's astonishing, and a wonderful nose. And I remember, I think we've got it in videotape somewhere. There was one day when it was like there was 6 samples of whiskey there. I had to decide which one it was, but I chose the one, and it was by that time it was a very subtle difference. But that's the one I chose, and we started the first run of it, and it's been a fantastic experience, just seeing that first bottle there. Unfortunately, it's got my ugly mug on the label, which probably frightens the horses. But just seeing that there, and then people's reaction, it's been terrific. We over the last couple of years since we launched, we won the People's Choice Gold Medal year before last, and we just recently won the Oran Moore Best Blended Whisky Award, which is, Oran Moore, that wonderful institution in Glasgow. So that's very prestigious. And lots of blind tastings where we've come out on top, with very stiff competition and much more expensive competition. But we seem to have hit that sweet spot. So I'm very pleased, and I'm very proud of all the people that worked so hard to bring it to market.
You've mentioned that you're on the bottle. It has been very much made in your image.
That sounds bad, doesn't it? He's on the bottle.
No, but no, I think it's great. I think it's, it's very different to their other offer. Like it looks very different. How does it make you feel that it's been sort of made in your image?
Well, that's the thing. I think you look at it from a different perspective when it's you. Maybe other people look at it and think that's okay. But yeah, I always feel a bit, when I see myself. But I'm the same when I'm on screen, on a movie or television. I feel very uncomfortable looking at myself. And the older I get, the more uncomfortable it's applied because I can see myself as well. But no, it's I suppose the the company that David Thompson owns a big PR company and market research company, and these people that know all about that sort of stuff. That's what they came up with, So I hide behind the fact that it wasn't my decision.
And what about the name as well? What's pardon the pun, the story behind the name Storyman?
Well, I think that came with these, because I'm down in Surrey most of the time, and we would have these Zoom talks with, like 8 people, all little things in the screen, and this department and that department. And, they're all really smart about what they do. But I as you probably already found out, I tend to ramble on a bit, and I'm known for telling stories about things and places I've been and people I've met, And one of the ladies there, I can't remember which one, but she came up with the idea of Storyman, and they all seemed to agree that was it. So I was quite happy to go along with that.
And you've mentioned it's a blended whiskey, and you like blended whiskies. Was it always going to be a blend for you? Because you know how single malts now are sort of seen as, the thing to have.
Yeah. I know there's there's that huge number of aficionados who, the single malt people and all the variations of that. But I would never pretend to be an expert in whiskies. I've always, if I like a whiskey, I like a whiskey. That's it. If it's a particular one, but always sort of preferred a blend to a single malt, really.
Yeah, and have you been drinking whiskey for a long time? Like, what's your sort of
since 8:30? No.
Oh, you and me both then.
Yeah, I mean, I was brought up in Clydebank, although I moved to London when I was quite young. But being Scottish, it was I remember working in a pub there, the Horseshoe Bar, I think it was called. In Clydebank, and the Arnott Young's, the Shipbreakers, was just down the road. And before we opened at 5 o'clock, about 4:30, we would just start pouring halves and half pints of beer, and just have dozens and dozens of them, because nobody ever asked for anything else. If somebody had asked for a gin and tonic, I'd have fallen over, and then they'd have probably lynched them. But that was if you're having a drink, you would have whiskey. Yeah.
And what are your favourite whiskies besides Storyman?
I like single malt, Smith's Glenlivet. There's so many of them, and it's wonderful that we have, for such a small country, we have such a diverse range of whiskies. And at the top end, you can't say any of them are, that's not so good. They're all pretty fantastic. That's why the whiskey market has conquered the world, because it is really, really good. When it's the top end stuff, it's special. So I'm happy to try whiskey from the islands or the Highlands or wherever. Every different one is a lovely experience.
And you're not just into your whiskey, you're a keen cook as well. So
Yes.
what do you like to cook at home?
Because I'm obsessive about things, I'll have like an Italian 2 months of cooking Italian food, and pretending to be Italian. It's pathetic, like it's got to be perfect. Um, but I made, I did a series in Rome called The Name of the Rose. And I remember going there for the first time at this nice hotel that I was staying at. And I said, first night, I said, give me a typical Italian pasta. And they said, alla amatriciana, with the guanciale, the smoked pork cheek. And it was wonderful. And so that was one of my favorite dishes to cook, guanciale, amatriciana. Um, it's very simple but very elegant at the same time. So there was my Italian period, a bit like Picasso. He was in his Italian period at that time, and I had a very short Korean period, um, which is mainly noodles. But I was following these folk on YouTube, so I was doing, I've got tubs of gochujang chili paste, and it's fantastic. But it's not a wide range of food. It's a bit like Chinese food. You look at um, Nicola Dennis's book or Escoffier and the ingredients. There's tons of ingredients. But a Korean cookery book or you look at Ken Hom's book, it's the same 6 ingredients in different proportions. That's all you need. Don't worry. So yeah, I was doing my Korean, and then I went into, quite recently, I was doing French cooking, trying to make quenelle, the Lyonnaise ones, and I've had sort of limited success. The sort of classic one is Paul Bocuse, when he does quenelle de brochette, pike dumplings, with a nantua sauce, which is like a seafood sauce, lobster shells and all that sort of thing. So I couldn't get the pike. I've got a friend that goes fishing. I fly fish, but you don't catch many pike on the fly. So I'm hoping to get a pike, a small jack pike, and try and create the great Bocuse's dish. So it's I really enjoy the challenge of it and the history of food as well. Like I'm thinking of doing a YouTube or a TikTok tour with a friend of mine, Ranald McDonald, that owns the Boisdale group of companies. The Boisdale restaurants in London, and just going around Scotland, finding the great restaurants, the the different types of food, from the East Coast to the West Coast, the Highlands, the Lowlands, all that. Because we've got a wonderful span of different foods and that are underappreciated. Always, you hear of the Scottish fishermen. We've got the most wonderful seafood, and why does it have to go to Spain and France? Why aren't we eating it in Scotland and Britain? I'm sure there's economic reasons, but I just find it very strange. So yeah, I'd like to do that, and I'm also an aficionado of Scotch pies. I travel to many places to eat the Scotch pies. In fact, there's one wee place in Annan, right next to the distillery, 5 minutes away. A little, one of these family bakeries that probably started as a family bakery, and they do all the old traditional Scots scones and potato scones and all that, and the cakes and things, all very traditional. And they make a Scotch pie. Oh my goodness! So I got to the distillery, have a few drams, then collect the pies from the the bakery, so I'm all set for the drive back. Although somebody else is driving.
I mean, that sounds ideal, because I can't imagine you get many Scotch pies in Surrey.
Almost impossible.
Yeah.
It's great. I've been thinking maybe I could make some at home, but I think because it's that watercress pastry, and I think it would collapse very easily. So I might have to try and source the pastry shells and the tops, from a butcher's supply place or something, and make my own proper mutton pie, if I could, just to try and recreate it. But there's another pie that I thought would suit that very well, because I found it in a book somewhere, and it was called a Kit Kat pie. And I thought, a Kit Kat, what? And I read more. And there was an innkeeper called Christopher Cat way back in Shakespearean days. And he made these very famous pies, and Christopher Kit, and they became known as Kit Kat pies. Nothing to do with cats. But it was very interesting, because there are a lot of raisins and sort of allspice, mace, things like that. So it was that whole thing of, the sweetness of meat and the savouriness of the sweetness of the raisins and the savoury of the spices in with this lovely meat.
It sounds great. So, anyone, obviously, you've had a very long acting career. What have been some highlights that you would like to share?
Oh, yeah. It's funny, because in one's career you can think of like big films that I've been in, like Braveheart and things like that, and they were a wonderful experience, and career changing, and therefore life changing, which was fantastic. But there's also tiny little things that I've done, with friends or whatever, that I've got just as much satisfaction out of, and being able to walk away thinking, yeah, that was the best I could do on the day. That was the best. So it's it's difficult to choose any particular one. I mean, I suppose being part of that team that made Braveheart was an extraordinary experience. It was just, and it was like one of the last real epic movies, because CGI was not a thing then. It was just, you were just hearing about it. So we did have 3,500 extras, which is a lot of people, and tons of horses. It was incredibly exciting. If you did that film now, a lot of it would be on a green screen, and there wouldn't be that feeling of, oh my goodness, look at this. But we had that. It was tremendous. And then the premiere in Stirling that Mel organised was, such a wonderfully memorable night, for many reasons. That my wife and I talk about it often and have a laugh, because it's funny that I was doing this film. It's funny because when films come out, the industry tends to they think, if you've been in a successful film, well, if we cast you in another film, that adds to the chances of being successful. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the way they seem to think. So I was offered this film, Emma, with Gwyneth Paltrow and all these different folk, Ewan McGregor, and I was working on that, and I said, I've got to go up to the premiere of Braveheart on a Sunday, and they said, oh, gee, let's look at this, because we've got a scene on the Monday morning. Anyway, to cut a long story short, they said, we've got so much invested in hiring this event, this place, and things. You can't go. I'm terribly sorry. So I've phoned my wife and said, look, we can't go. And bless her, she said, that's okay. But I could tell, I was disappointed as well. So after about half an hour, I mean, I was doing okay. I was being well paid. And so I phoned her back and I said, we've got a little airport up here called Seven Oaks. And I said, go up there and hire a plane. So she did. And so with the Saturday and Sunday off, so we drove up to the airport. The plane, twin engine thing, flew us up. We landed, a car picked us up. We went to the premiere. We went to the after party. It was fantastic. It was in Stirling Castle. It was unbelievable. They had fire eaters and jugglers, and it was all sort of medieval stuff, you know. And it was the most wonderful party. Everybody adored the film. Felt so wonderful. Eventually, at 3:00 in the morning, I've got to drive back because that same plane is waiting to take off. So we say goodbye to everyone. I get in the car and we're driving to the airport. And the guy had these old brick phones that start moving. It rings and he says, oh, it's for you. I thought, oh, geez, what's happened? Some of the kids or something. And it's the police. And they said, do you have a plane leaving for London? I said, yeah, we're like 20 minutes away from the airport. They said, this is incredible. He said, would you mind taking a human heart on the plane for a transplant? Because in those days, it was very, very time critical. I said, no, it's okay. They said, just keep on the motorway like that. And then within 10 minutes, this ambulance pulled in front of us, and then two motorcycle cops with lights shot down, and they were on the phone so we just got on. It was a big yellow box, and Annie and I put it between us, and we flew down, landed at the airport, and an ambulance and police there, and it went scooshing off somewhere. It was gone, you know. But I thought, if fate hadn't said, we really want to go, somebody got a heart that night or that day. It was amazing. Yeah.
That is amazing. That's really, that's so cool. And I take it you don't really know anything about the person that got the heart.
No. I just hope it worked, cool. and it was great. But imagine the chances of that.
Yeah, that's mental. That's so cool. And so obviously you've, with things like Braveheart, that's like a dream film. Do you have anything on your sort of dream to-do list?
Not really. At my advanced age, I'm looking for a film like playing a Gandalf-y character, you know, so I don't have to do much. But, I'm looking for jobs that require a lot of sitting down or lying in bed. I don't mind those. I think I've seen enough of horses, and horses have certainly seen enough of me.
And what do you have coming up for the rest of the year? Is there anything you can share with us, or anything to do with the whisky at all?
Yeah, I did the end of a series called Talamasca for AMC, and we're hoping to start that in the next season in the autumn. As far as the whisky goes, we continue to get it out there. It's just started to be imported into America. It's a bit difficult just now with tariffs and all that sort of thing. But we're getting out to America. It's in China. We're looking at India. But I just want to grow our home market as well, you know, because although it's got my ugly mug on it, I am very proud of that whiskey. And not proud for myself, but I'm proud for the talented people that put that together, and especially David Thompson, who the faith to put a lot of money towards it, and Keith Law, who is just a master at his craft. It's amazing, and I get such a buzz out of people enjoying it. You know, I had a friend of mine that I gave him a bottle about 2 weeks ago. I said, "There, Jimmy, have a go at that." And he's a dyed-in-the-wool Irishman. Been over here for years, but he's as Irish as anything. And I gave it to him, and he said, "Oh," he said, "no," he said, "I drink the green spot. You know, that's my drink." I said, "I know, but I just like you to. You're my pal. Have a wee dram." So about 3 nights later, he phones me up and he said, "Now, He said, I've shut the door on the office. He said, no one else should hear this. He said, but James, he said, your whiskey's the best whiskey I've ever tasted. I thought, yes. But I won't reveal his second name.
Oh, that's brilliant. Just to quickly go back to the Scotch pie things, by the way, I don't know if you know, there is a cafe in London set up by a Scottish guy called Greg, called Auld Hag, and they do Scotch pies, and they do morning rolls, and they do square sausage, and they do really good coffee and cheesies.
Would you
and
send me the
sandwiches.
link?
I will do, yeah. He's doing really well.
Is that in the centre of London?
Yeah, I think it's sort of like Islington way. Yeah. So I'll send you the details, because I'm sure he would be delighted if you popped in. Yeah, he's doing really well. Yeah, it's really taken off. It's such a good idea, because I used to live down there, and I always wanted, a rolling sausage on Friday if you've been drinking.
Absolutely.
And he's doing it, so that you'll get your Scotch pies in there.
Oh, that's fantastic! Excellent, excellent.
Well, thank you very much for your time. I'll just check with Kelly if we're all good, if there's anything else, and if not, we'll wrap up. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time, James. It's been great to chat. Lovely to hear your stories and find out more about your whiskey.
Thank you very much indeed. It's been lovely talking with you.